The Silent Watchers. The mining station Frontier 7 hung in the darkness between stars, a small speck of human civilization in the endless void. Commander James Rutherford stood before the observation window of the command deck, watching ice asteroids drift past like frozen ghosts. He was a weathered man in his late 50s, with gray streaks running through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many years spent staring at the same view. Behind him, the control room hummed with the steady rhythm of machinery and quiet conversation. 12 crew members worked at their stations, monitoring systems that kept Frontier 7 alive in the hostile emptiness of space. The station had been operational for 23 years, serving as a waypoint for ships traveling through the outer territories. It was not glamorous work. There were no battles here, no diplomatic missions, no grand adventures. Just routine maintenance, supply transfers, and the occasional distress call from a ship with engine trouble. James had commanded Frontier 7 for the past 8 years, and he knew every bolt, every corridor, every hiding spot where young crew members went to steal a private moment. It was home, in its own cold and sterile way. Sarah Chen, the station's communications officer, looked up from her console with a frown on her young face. "Commander, I am picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. It is very faint, but there is definitely something out there." James turned from the window, his interest piqued. "What kind of something?" Sarah manipulated her controls, and a holographic display appeared above her station. A small cluster of dots blinked in the darkness, moving slowly but steadily toward their position. "Multiple contacts," she said. "At least 15, maybe more. They are too far away for detailed scans, but their trajectory suggests they are heading directly toward us." James walked over to examine the display more closely. His instincts, honed by decades in space, were telling him something was wrong. Ships traveling together in groups that large usually meant military convoys or refugee fleets, and this sector was too remote for either. "Can you identify their origin?" Sarah shook her head. "Negative, Commander. Their energy signatures do not match anything in our database. They are not human vessels, that much is certain." The room fell silent. First contact with an unknown alien species was supposed to be handled by specialized diplomatic ships, not a small mining station in the middle of nowhere. But the universe rarely cared about protocol. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's science officer, joined them at the communications console. His eyes were bright with excitement behind his thick glasses. "This could be incredible, Commander. We might be the first humans to make contact with a completely new civilization. Think of what we could learn." James wished he could share Marcus's enthusiasm, but something about the situation felt off. The ships were not transmitting any signals, not attempting any communication, just moving forward with mechanical precision. "Send a standard greeting on all frequencies," James ordered. "Let them know we are here and that we come in peace." Sarah's fingers flew across her controls as she composed and transmitted the message. It was a simple communication, explaining that Frontier 7 was a peaceful civilian station and offering assistance if the unknown ships needed it. The message went out into the void, carried by radio waves that would take several minutes to reach the approaching vessels. The crew waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. The unknown ships continued their approach, now close enough for more detailed scans. Marcus studied the data with growing confusion. "Their hull composition is unlike anything I have ever seen," he reported. "It seems to be some kind of organic metal, if that makes any sense. And their energy output is massive, far beyond what should be necessary for simple propulsion." James felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. "Still no response to our greeting?" "Nothing," Sarah confirmed. "They are either ignoring us or unable to receive our transmissions." He made a decision. "Go to yellow alert. Power up our defensive systems and notify all crew to report to their stations. I want everyone ready for anything." The alarm lights began to flash a soft amber throughout the station. It was not a full emergency, but it was a clear signal that something unusual was happening. Crew members who had been off duty began filing into the command deck, taking their positions with practiced efficiency. Lieutenant David Park, the station's security chief, appeared at James's side. His hand rested casually on the weapon at his belt, a habit he had developed during his years in the military. "What are we dealing with, Commander?" James pointed at the holographic display. "Unknown contacts, possibly hostile. I want all security teams armed and ready. If these visitors have bad intentions, we need to be prepared to protect the station." David nodded and moved to organize his people. James watched him go, grateful for the lieutenant's calm professionalism. The man had seen combat during the Outer Rim conflicts 10 years ago and knew how to handle pressure. The unknown ships were now close enough for visual confirmation. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the approaching fleet in terrible detail. They were massive vessels, each one easily 3 times the size of Frontier 7 itself. Their hulls were dark gray and covered in strange markings that seemed to pulse with a faint green light. The ships moved with an unnatural grace, flowing through space like living creatures rather than machines. "My God," Marcus whispered. "They are beautiful." James did not think they were beautiful. He thought they looked predatory, like sharks circling wounded prey. A new alert sounded on Sarah's console. "Commander, they are powering weapons." Multiple energy signatures building across their fleet. James felt time slow down as his training took over. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Raise shields and prepare for evasive action." The station shuddered as its defensive systems came online. Frontier 7 was not a warship, but it had basic shields and a few light weapons for protection against pirates and debris. Against a fleet of unknown alien warships, those defenses would be like paper against fire. The first shot came without warning, a beam of brilliant green energy that struck the station's upper section with devastating force. Alarms screamed throughout the command deck as systems overloaded and failed. The lights flickered and dimmed. A section of the ceiling collapsed, showering sparks across the room. "Shield at 40%, someone shouted over the chaos. "Hull breach on deck 7. James grabbed the edge of his console to steady himself as another impact rocked the station. "Return fire. Target their lead ship and fire everything we have." The station's weapons responded, sending streaks of white energy toward the alien fleet. The shots connected with the lead vessel but seemed to do no damage at all. The green pulses simply absorbed the impacts and continued forward. "They are not even slowing down," David reported, his voice tight with frustration. "Our weapons are not effective." James knew they had only one option left. "Sarah, send a distress call on all emergency channels. Tell them we are under attack by unknown hostiles and need immediate assistance." He paused, looking around at his crew, at the young faces filled with fear and determination. "Tell them to send everything they have." The message went out, screaming across the void at faster than light speeds. It would reach the nearest military outpost in approximately 6 hours. Help would come, James was certain of that. But whether it would arrive in time was another question entirely. The alien ships continued their assault, methodically tearing apart Frontier 7's defenses. The station shook with each impact, and James could hear the screams of his crew through the communication system as sections of the station were exposed to vacuum. He had been in dangerous situations before, had survived equipment failures and natural disasters, but this was different. This was deliberate, calculated violence from beings who showed no interest in communication or mercy. They were being hunted, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The call to arms. Admiral Catherine Hayes sat in her office aboard the military installation New Terra Station, reviewing reports that all seemed to blend together into meaningless streams of numbers and logistics. She was 58 years old, with short silver hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. 3 decades of military service had taught her to read between the lines of official reports, to see the patterns that others missed, to know when something was building toward crisis. The reports in front of her were troubling. For the past 6 months, there had been a steady increase in disappearances along the outer territories. Ships going silent, stations losing contact, entire colonies reporting strange sightings in their systems before communications ceased entirely. The official explanation was equipment failures and natural phenomena. The outer territories were still largely unexplored, and there were countless hazards that could destroy a ship or station. But Catherine did not believe in coincidences, and the pattern was too consistent to be random accidents. Something was out there, something dangerous, and it was moving steadily toward more populated areas of human space. Her thoughts were interrupted by her aide, a young officer named Thomas Rivera, who moved with the nervous energy of someone who brought urgent news. "Admiral, we have received a distress call from Frontier 7. They report being under attack by unknown hostile forces." Catherine felt her heart rate increase, though her expression remained calm. "Show me." Thomas activated the holographic display in the center of the office, and James Rutherford's face appeared. The image was distorted and flickering with interference, but the fear and determination in his eyes were clear. "This is Commander Rutherford of Frontier 7 to any ships in range. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. They appeared without warning and began firing on our station. Our defenses are failing, and we have multiple casualties." The image shook as another explosion rocked the station. "We need immediate assistance. If anyone can hear this, please send help." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving only static. Catherine stared at the empty display for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Thomas stood waiting, knowing better than to interrupt when the Admiral was thinking. Finally, she spoke. "When was this received?" "Approximately 30 minutes ago," Thomas replied. "It was transmitted on emergency frequencies and picked up by 3 different relay stations. The timestamp indicates it was sent 6 hours before we received it due to light speed delays." Catherine did a quick calculation in her head. 6 hours ago, plus 30 minutes since receipt, meant that Frontier 7 had been under attack for over 6 hours. If the assault had continued at the intensity shown in the distress call, there might be nothing left to save. "Get me Fleet Command," Catherine ordered. "I want every available ship readied for immediate deployment to Frontier 7's coordinates. And send a priority message to Admiral Chen of the 7th Fleet. Tell her we may have a first contact situation that has turned hostile." Thomas hesitated. "Admiral, regulations state that first contact scenarios must be handled through diplomatic channels. We should notify the Foreign Relations Bureau before launching a military response." Catherine fixed him with a look that made the young officer take a step back. "Those regulations were written for peaceful first contact, Lieutenant." Commander Rutherford's message was very clear about the nature of this encounter. "We are not dealing with confused explorers or lost travelers. We are dealing with an aggressive force that opened fire without provocation." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ships docked at New Terra Station. Dozens of vessels hung in the darkness, from small patrol craft to massive destroyers. Each one represented years of engineering and resources, but more importantly, each one was crewed by men and women who had sworn to protect humanity from threats both known and unknown. "This is exactly the scenario those ships were built for," Catherine continued. "An enemy we do not understand attacking our people. We can sort out diplomatic niceties after we have stopped our stations from being blown apart." "Yes, ma'am," Thomas said, moving quickly to carry out her orders. Within minutes, the station exploded into controlled chaos. Alarms sounded, calling crews to their ships. Orders flowed through communication channels, coordinating the assembly of a response fleet. Catherine moved to the command center, where dozens of officers worked at stations monitoring the entire sector. She took her position at the central command console and began issuing directives. "I want the destroyer group Hammer led by Captain Morrison to launch immediately. They are to proceed at maximum speed to Frontier 7 and engage any hostile forces they encounter." The officer at the tactical station nodded. "Hammer Group acknowledging orders, Admiral." They report ready to launch in 10 minutes. Good, Catherine said. Have the carrier Valiant prepare all fighter wings for deployment. I want a full combat air patrol established around Frontier 7's location as soon as we arrive. And get me a communication link with the diplomatic corps. They need to know what is happening, even if they do not have authority over the military response. The preparations continued with the smooth efficiency of a military that had trained for exactly this kind of emergency. Ships began undocking from the station, their engines flaring to life as they oriented toward their destination. Fighter craft launched in neat formations, their pilots running through pre-flight checks as they accelerated away from the carrier. Catherine watched it all unfold on her displays, feeling the familiar mixture of pride and dread that came with sending people into danger. She had done this before, many times, but it never got easier. Each ship represented hundreds of lives, each fighter carried a young man or woman with hopes and dreams and families waiting for them to return. The weight of command meant carrying responsibility for all those lives, and Catherine felt that weight pressing down on her shoulders like a physical force. Admiral, Sarah at Communications spoke up, we are receiving additional reports from nearby sectors. Multiple stations and ships are reporting similar encounters with unknown hostile vessels. The pattern matches what happened at Frontier 7. Catherine felt her blood run cold. How many reports? At least 7 confirmed, possibly more. The attack seemed to be coordinated, all beginning within a 2-hour window. It was worse than she had feared. This was not a single incident or isolated attack. It was the beginning of an invasion, a carefully planned assault across multiple locations designed to overwhelm humanity's defenses before they could organize a response. But whoever these attackers were, they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated just how quickly humans could mobilize when threatened, and how fiercely they would fight to protect their own. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Catherine ordered. Tell them we have a Code Crimson situation. Multiple hostile contacts across the outer territories engaging in coordinated attacks against civilian and military targets. Request immediate authorization for full-scale military response. The officer's face paled. Code Crimson was the highest threat level, reserved for existential dangers to human civilization. It had never been used before, not even during the worst moments of the Outer Rim conflicts. Yes, ma'am, the officer said, moving to establish the connection. Catherine turned back to the tactical display, watching as red markers appeared across the map indicating sites of attacks. The enemy fleet was larger than initial reports had suggested, with ships appearing in systems throughout the outer territories. They were moving with purpose and coordination, striking at isolated targets before human forces could respond. It was a sound strategy, one that would have worked against a less adaptable species. But humans had learned hard lessons throughout their history. They had learned that survival meant working together, that safety required vigilance, and that sometimes violence was the only answer to violence. The communication link to Earth Command established, and Fleet Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. His dark eyes were hard and focused as he took in the situation reports flooding his displays. Catherine, what is our current status? We have multiple confirmed attacks across 7 sectors, sir, Catherine reported. Enemy forces are engaging civilian stations and military outposts with overwhelming firepower. Our defensive positions are being overrun. I have dispatched Hammer Group to provide immediate relief to Frontier 7, but we need full fleet authorization to mount an effective counteroffensive. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Authorization granted, Admiral Hayes. You are cleared to mobilize all available forces and engage the enemy with extreme prejudice. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Protect our people by any means necessary. He paused, and his expression softened slightly. And Catherine, be careful out there. We still do not know what we are dealing with. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. That is what we are going to find out, sir. Hayes out. The connection closed, and she turned to address her command staff. All right, people, this is what we trained for. I want every ship we have ready to fight within the hour. Contact all nearby fleets and coordinate a unified response. These attackers picked a fight with humanity, and they are about to learn why that was a mistake. The officers responded with determination, moving to carry out their orders. Ships continued launching from New Terra Station, forming up into battle groups as they prepared to jump to faster-than-light speeds. Catherine watched the fleet assemble with satisfaction. It was not the largest force humanity had ever gathered, but it would be enough to send a clear message. Humans did not start fights, but they finished them. And if these unknown attackers thought they could strike at civilian stations without consequence, they were about to receive a very painful education in human resolve. The first battle group finished forming and jumped away, vanishing in flashes of light as they entered hyperspace. Others followed in rapid succession, creating a cascade of departures that lit up the darkness around the station. Catherine remained at her post, coordinating movements and ensuring that every ship knew its mission. Hours passed in focused activity. Reports continued flowing in from across the territories, painting a picture of widespread destruction but also growing resistance. Human forces were regrouping, establishing defensive lines, and beginning to push back against the invaders. The enemy was learning that humans were not easy prey, that every station and ship would fight with everything they had, and that help was always coming. Finally, Catherine's own ship, the battlecruiser Indomitable, was ready to launch. She made her way to the bridge, taking her seat in a command chair as the crew went through final preparations. The bridge was a marvel of human engineering, with displays covering every surface and officers working in perfect coordination. Captain Lewis, a veteran commander with 20 years of experience, turned from his station to face Catherine. "All systems green, Admiral. We are ready to depart on your order." Catherine looked around at her crew, at the faces filled with determination and resolve. These men and women had chosen to serve, had volunteered to put themselves in danger to protect others. They deserved a commander who would lead them well and bring them home safely. But they also deserved honesty. "This will not be an easy fight," Catherine said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "We are facing an enemy we do not understand, with technology we have not seen before. Some of us may not come back. But every moment we hesitate, more people die. Our friends, our families, our fellow humans are out there fighting for their lives, and they need us. So we are going to go out there, and we are going to show these attackers what happens when you threaten humanity." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmatives. Catherine felt pride swelling in her chest. This was why she served, why she had dedicated her life to the military. Not for glory or power, but for moments like this when courage and determination could make the difference between survival and extinction. "Take us out, Captain Lewis. Maximum speed to Frontier 7. Let's go save our people." The Indomitable's engines roared to life, pushing the massive ship away from the station. Within minutes, they had cleared the traffic lanes and were ready to jump. The countdown began, and Catherine watched the stars blur and stretch as they entered hyperspace. The battle was about to begin, and humanity was coming with fire and fury.